For too long, women have not been heard or believed.
You told the world that time's up on violence.
1 out of every 5 women will be sexually assaulted and raped before she reaches the age of 18.
It's 2018 and I've realized that nobody is safe long as she is alive. And every friend that I know has a story like mine.
You think that just because I'm a woman, I'm incapable of making my own choices?
It doesn't matter what you think.
Don't I as a woman deserve to even have an opinion? Don't you?
You have no idea what it is to be a woman.
So I asked myself, what can I say about being a woman?
Hi, my name is DAmini Creatives and this is Her. Women have a big impact on our lives, especially as we're growing up. They're our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters, our aunts, our cousins, our partners, and so on. Women have the power to create nations. They help shape the world, our societies, and communities. Women are amazing. They are innovators, trailblazers, creators, and dreamers. In this series, Her, I will interview a dozen inspiring and influential women from different backgrounds. Are you ready to meet her? Let's go! Who is Christianna Alexiou?
It's a really good question, and I'll try to keep it very simple. So I'm Christianna. I'm half Greek, half Armenian. I grew up in Ottawa, and I've basically lived here my entire life. I'm currently in my last year of my journalism bachelor's at Carleton University. So on many levels, I consider myself a freelance journalist, and I'm still a student, and I'm also a researcher at my university within the School of Journalism. And yeah, that's basically kind of me in a nutshell.
What are some defining moments in a girl's life? What was one of the most defining moments in your life?
I want to say that there are so many positive ones, but I think that as humans, sometimes we get stuck on some of the negative things that have happened in our lives. There are so many really good moments that I had when I would be playing ringette, and then I would finally have a really strong female role model that I could look up to, that gave me guidance. That's something that I look back on, and I was I was so lucky to have all of those strong women in my life. But I think as a young athlete entering into that industry, I think we read so much about how women and girls drop out of sports so early on, compared to the rate that boys drop out. And I think that really spoke true to a lot of the experience that I faced as a young athlete. I really played every sport. I also did dance too. Wasn't really good at it, but I tried. Sports was really my go-to. I did track and field and volleyball and obviously ringette. And it could be really difficult being in gym class, for instance, in elementary and high school, and being seen as the girl who could be who could hang out with the guys because I was good at that. But I saw that there was a lot of girls who maybe weren't as not even I don't even think it was ability, but just not very interested in it and being looked down upon because of that. And I feel too often women are looked down, especially when it comes to our physical capabilities. And so that was probably a really defining moment in my life, kind of playing those sports and seeing how different every single one of the girls was treated, and hearing kind of the behind the scenes conversation where one of my friends would be like, well, this happened to me and this wasn't really good. And I was I had a completely different experience, all because I'm super inclined in gym class and stuff like that. So I think when it came really down to the sports, when it came down to when you were doing anything that was really male or really boy-like, that was very defining, I would say.
I really connect with that because like even I feel like, because I played a lot of soccer too when I was like younger and growing up, and I still do somewhat now. And it's almost like when you're one of the boys, you don't get to see a lot of things that happens to other girls that don't necessarily fit into that one of the boys, you know, place. So I really connect with that. I feel like a lot of other girls.
Yeah, I saw a video recently online of this girl. I'm very into weightlifting now, and like I really like watching videos about it as well. And I remember I saw this video very recently of this girl who was loading up the squat rack, and she put 300 pounds on the squat rack, and she said that a guy came up to her and was like, no way you're gonna be able to like lift that. And I remember that like she said that I was just gonna hit it for like 1 rep. She's like, but I decided to do like a full set, and she ended up doing 8 reps. And I was like, that is awesome. Like that makes me happy when I see stuff like that, of like kind of proving them wrong. Like we're just as strong, we're just as capable as you. Like just because something has been notoriously marked as this is a male thing doesn't mean a woman can't do it equally or even better.
Definitely. Because I feel like a lot of the times like those things are still happening, and you think it's crazy, like in 2022. Like honestly.
Yeah.
How have women around you influenced your life?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned kind of throughout the other answers a little bit of this. I am so fortunate. I can talk in past tense because they're all still around. I have so many strong female role models in my life. Growing up and playing ringette was the main one because it's a primarily female-dominated sport. So all of my teammates were always female. And most of, like, a lot of the coaches were male, but a lot of there was a lot of women around me, basically. But within my own family as well, my mom was a huge role model for me, and especially my grandmothers as well. Unfortunately, both of my grandfathers passed away before I was born, so I never got to meet them. So it was always like my 2 grandmothers, and they were these like such strong, independent women, and it was really nice to have that in my life. My grandmother, particularly on my mom's side, faced a lot of adversities. She is an immigrant. She brought my mom over with her and her 4 other siblings from Jordan when my mom was only 3 years old. And then shortly after, her husband passed away, and they faced a lot of really big challenges trying to grow up, being a single mother, raising 5 kids. And so I would grow up hearing these stories, stories of my grandma's grandmother, so my great-grandmother, and the adversity she faced in the Middle East and a bunch of stuff like that. And it was very humbling, I think, to see kind of where I am now. I kind of never taken my position, no matter what challenges I'm facing, for granted, knowing how hard the women around me had to work to give me the opportunities that I have today. And so I think it's really important for young girls in general to have those kinds of role models in their lives. The topics that I covered through my journalism, the path that I took of doing higher education and studying journalism at Carleton, and the confidence that I have, which comes and goes, just like I think anyone. I really have to dedicate that to the strong women in my life, which includes my mom, my grandmother, but also just like my aunts, whether they married into the family or not. I'm very fortunate in that way, and I really hope that a lot of other girls have that. And I know that not everyone will. And I think that's why it's so important through organizations, whether it's organized sports, through school, through other like opportunities and extracurricular activities for young girls to really find ways to cultivate like safe environments with strong women to help them talk about issues that may be a little bit too difficult to talk about to other people.
How do you think the world's view of women has evolved?
I think it's better. I think it's growing positively and in a better direction. I feel like more women now are feeling more comfortable talking about different challenges that they face in their life. I know I have for sure. I feel more comfortable now talking openly about maybe challenges that I faced in my younger life or challenges that I'm facing now. If I'm treated poorly in a certain situation, I don't feel as scared. Still feel a little scared, but not as scared as I would before. I feel like there's a lot of things in place to help support women, especially in the workplace. But all that being said, I think that there's still a lot more work to be done. I think we've come a long way, but it can't be, when we look back in history and say, well, oh, it's not as bad as it used to be, doesn't mean, just because it's not horrible, doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue working towards it. I also acknowledge that my position and my experience as a woman is very different than other women in Canada. And I'm privileged in many ways, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration when I talk about my perspective on this issue, because I know my position as a woman is and my perspective is very different than other women in Canada. And I think also when I say that things have gotten much better, that's also in the Canadian North American context. And far too often we're hyper-focused on what's happening around us, when we really have to take a step back and look about what's happening on the world, on the world view, on the world scale. And when you look at that, there are so many things that need to be changed. And I don't know if I necessarily have the answers to that. I don't know if any singular person does, but I think that there's a lot of positive changes happening, and I'm just happy to see that more women, especially in my life, I'm thinking about like my friends, younger women that I coach through growing up and seeing changes that I didn't necessarily see when I was growing up.
What do you believe can be done to address gender stereotypes?
That's a really good question. I think we talked a little bit about gender stereotypes and like the boys thing. It can be tricky. I think that there's stereotypes with everything, and sometimes addressing them is really good, but that can be very intimidating as well. But I think really it's just generating more communication on the topic, covering the topic more through, and that's kind of the beauty of journalism sometimes, is you can put together a piece that's very highly reported, something that's backed up by fact, something that like experts can talk about. And so when you address kind of issues like that, sometimes if you have like work to back up, say like, hey, this is wrong, this is what we need to be doing, that can be very helpful. And I think maybe in individual instances as well, like if you have a friend or a family member who's maybe using a stereotype or is saying something that can be hurtful, in a very like calm, collected way, very constructive, we can address those kinds of issues and say like, hey, like that's not okay, this is actually like very stereotypical, like this is kind of how we should address it. So I think really generating more communication, and I think that really comes back to generating more safer environments as well. Like if we have more safer environments as women to talk about these kinds of issues, more women will feel more comfortable speaking out about things that make them uncomfortable. Because I know in my own life, there's so many different things that I'm learning about, and when someone tells me that something's making them uncomfortable, I want to learn how to not do that and to make safer like environments for anyone to express how they're feeling. And I think that's kind of the first step in addressing stereotypes.
Why do you think it's important to celebrate International Women's Day?
That's a good question. Because we're awesome. Because women deserve to be acknowledged. I think that it should happen all year round. And I think in many ways it is. But it's nice just to take like a moment and appreciate the women in your life. I know like I'm doing that this month, like taking a moment back and like thinking, definitely going to call my grandmother and tell her I love her and appreciate my mom, but also all of the other strong women in my lives. I think it's also a good opportunity, like as women or just like as a person in general, to take a moment and reflect on the adversities that women have faced, that women continue to face. And so it's nice to have kind of a moment to celebrate women, to celebrate everything that like we have achieved, and will continue to achieve. So I think it's kind of important to take sometimes that moment, because I think often we can overlook it. I know as women sometimes we also like brush it like, oh, whatever, that's not even a big deal. And it's nice to feel appreciated and to appreciate other people as well. So I think that's really important.
Definitely. What does the 2022 IWB theme #BreakTheBias mean to you?
I guess I think its name kind of says it all, just like break the bias. I feel like that sounds really nice. And I think it's something that's really important. I think that when we talked about like why is it important to celebrate women, I was like, it's just important in general. But I really like that there's a broader message behind it that kind of says like, let's take a minute to celebrate women and to acknowledge everything that they have accomplished in their lives. But we also have to acknowledge that there's so many adversities that women are still facing. And I think that really rings true. And I think a lot of women will be able to relate to that. I think on the website it said that it was kind of wants more diversity and but also equitability. And I think that's really important as well, especially in the workplace, especially in higher education. That is a big one. When we think of scholarships and safer environments. Remember, I worked with a volunteer at the newspaper that I worked for who wrote a whole piece about mothers and like student mothers and breastfeeding on campus. And that was a really difficult piece to cover. And you realize that being a woman isn't one thing, right? Like me being a woman is very different than my friend. Me being a woman is very different than potentially like a professor that's teaching me. Like there's so many things that diversify women, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well. And I really think the Break the Bias is doing that as well. So I think oftentimes we think on a binary scale of like women and men, but it's important to take a step back and realize that everyone kind of has different experiences and perspectives. Not all women are the same, but I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to all women deserve the same opportunities.
What advice do you have for the next generation of amazing women? What do you have to say to her?
I like that question. I would say don't be scared. I think that so many women kind of move forward with so much caution. I know that there were so many things that I didn't do in my life because I was like, oh, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. And I think I'm seeing that less and less now. I think back to when I coached, like, they were like 8, 9, and 10-year-old ring out players. And I was like, oh my God, the confidence that they have. Like, I did not have this at your age. So what I would have to say is, like, just don't be scared. Do what makes you feel good. Talk about what you feel like talking about, and do it unapologetically. Yeah, happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much for interviewing me. This was a pleasure, and I hope my answers were helpful.
I'm a machine when I do it. I'll be catching fire, gasoline when I do it. Just 'cause you're packing, whoop, down south. That don't mean I'm never gonna take it like down, baby. You're the man, but I get the power. You make rain. the power.